October 13th, 2025, Douglas O. Reagan releases his shocking book, Stealing Nazi Secrets. National interest proclaims, America systematically stole German war technology. But that's only half the story. Because as early as 1945, in secret British listening posts, German engineers themselves explained why the Allies had no other choice. 10,000 German prisoners of war, scientists, engineers, officers, all secretly recorded. The project was called Project Eavesdrop. The British believed they were documenting war crimes. Instead, they got something entirely different, a technical encyclopedia. German experts openly discussed V2 turbopumps that ran at 30,000 RPM. Messerschmitt Me 262 engines with axial-flow technology. Konrad Zus's programmable computer from 1941. And they uttered a phrase that 80 years later sounds prophetic. They will have to copy everything. They have no alternative. Today, in 2025, NASA uses V2 turbopump designs for Artemis rockets. SpaceX's Raptor engine is based on the same principles from 1942. The Boeing 737 flies with Me 262 wing designs, and Konrad Zus's binary architecture is in every computer. The secret recordings from 1945 were right. Today, I'll show you the documented technical lineage from German POW conversations to modern rocket engines. Imagine this. Trent Park, England, May 1945. A Victorian mansion. Repurposed as a POW camp for high-ranking German officers. The rooms are comfortable, the food is good, the prisoners are allowed to speak freely. What they don't know, every room is bugged. British intelligence officers are listening to everything. They expect confessions about war crime, about Hitler, about the SS. Instead, they hear something completely unexpected, engineering discussion, technical debates. Precise explanations of why German technology was years ahead of the Allies. A Peenemünde engineer explains to an Air Force officer, our V2 turbopump reaches 30,000 RPM at a turbine entry temperature of 2,700 degrees Celsius. The Americans have nothing that can even come close to withstanding that temperature. Their best material fails at 1,800 degrees. Another adds, and the power density, 58,000 horsepower from 150 kilograms. They built turbopumps in 1945 that were lighter than modern ones and delivered more power. The British listening officers don't immediately understand what they're hearing. Only months later, when American and British scientists inspect German facilities, does it become clear the prisoners weren't exaggerating. Every number is accurate, every technical claim is correct. And suddenly, Project Eavesdrop becomes something else. A handbook, a manual, a technical roadmap for the post-war world. Take the V2 turbopump. Technically, it was a marvel. The problem with rockets is simple. You need enormous amounts of fuel in a short amount of time. The V2 burned 9,000 kilograms of alcohol and liquid oxygen in a 60-second burn time. That means 150 kilograms per second had to be pumped from the tanks into the combustion chamber, under high pressure, because only high pressure guarantees efficient combustion. The solution, a turbopump, powered by steam from a gas generator. The German solution was radical, 2 pumps on a single shaft, one for alcohol, one for oxygen. Rotational speed, 30,000 revolutions per minute. For comparison, a modern Formula One engine revs at 18,000 RPM. The V2 turbopump spun almost twice as fast in 1942. But the challenge wasn't just the speed, it was the temperature. The gas generator produced steam at 2,700 degrees Celsius. The turbine blades had to withstand this temperature at 30,000 RPM under enormous centrifugal forces. German metallurgists developed special nickel-chromium alloys, heat-resistant, lightweight, strong enough for the stress. In 1942, there was nothing comparable. The Americans had no turbopump in 1945 that even came close to that performance. Their best experiment reached 8,000 RPM. Then it exploded. The materials failed. The bearings couldn't handle the heat. The entire design was too heavy. An American engineer wrote in a declassified report in 1946, "The V2 turbopump is a mystery. We understand the principle, but we can't replicate it. Our materials aren't good enough. Our manufacturing tolerances aren't precise enough. We need the German engineers." In the Project Eavesdrop recordings, a Peenemünde engineer explains exactly that to a colleague. He says, "The Allies will try to copy our turbopump. They will fail. Not because the design is bad, but because they don't have the materials science. They will have to get our people." And that's exactly what happened. Operation Paperclip, 1945 to 1952, systematic, planned, carried out by the US military and intelligence agencies. The goal, bring German scientists and engineers to the USA, not as prisoners of war, as employees, with contracts, with salaries, with new identities. The list is long. Werner von Braun, the chief developer of the V2, Kurt de Boos, launch director at Peenemünde, Arthur Rudolph, head of production, a total of 1-600 German experts, with their families, all to America, all with one mission, to build rockets, but not just any rockets, but V2 successors, rockets with German technology, only now for America. Von Braun went to Huntsville, Alabama, Marshall Space Flight Center. There, he built the Redstone rocket. Basically an improved V2, then the Jupiter, then the Saturn, each based on V2 principles, each with turbopumps that came from German designs. The Saturn V, the rocket that took astronauts to the moon, had 5 F1 engines. Each F1 had a turbopump. Design principle, German. Basis, V2 from 1942, further developed, enlarged, but at its core, Peenemünde technology. The Project Eavesdrop recordings reveal even more. An Air Force officer explains the Me-262 engine. The Jumo 04, the world's first operational turbojet engine, and he explains the key is the axial flow. Air flows straight through the engine, through a series of compressor stages. Each stage increases the pressure. At the end, combustion chamber. Fuel is injected, ignition. Hot gas expands through the turbine. The turbine drives the compressor. The rest of the energy is expelled as thrust to the rear. That's the principle of every modern jet engine. Axial flow. Compressor, combustion chamber, turbine, thrust, developed in 1942 by Junkers for the Me-262. The British also had jet engines in 1945. The Gloucester Meteor flew with centrifugal flow engines. Air is sucked in from the front, deflected to the side, compressed there, then burned, and less efficient, larger diameter, heavier construction, poorer performance at high speeds. The Germans had already overcome that. Axial was the future. Compact, efficient, powerful. And the Allies knew it. After the war, British engineers dismantled every Jumo 04 they could find. They photographed every component. They measured every dimension. They analyzed the materials, and then they copied them. Rolls-Royce developed the Nene engine, based on Jumo 004 axial flow principles, combined with British centrifugal technology. Later, purely axial. Pratt & Whitney in America. The same thing, the J57 engine, based on German axial flow technology. Every modern jet engine, from the Boeing 737 to the F-35, uses axial flow compression, all derived from a German design from 1942, but it doesn't stop there. Konrad Zuse, In the Project Eavesdrop recordings, no one mentions him directly. He wasn't a military engineer, he was a civilian, but his work was revolutionary. In 1941, in the middle of the war, Zuse completed the Z3, the world's first functional, programmable, fully automatic computer. Not mechanical, like Charles Babbage's analytical engine, not electromechanical like the Harvard Mark I, but binary, with relays, programmable. The Z3 could perform floating point calculations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, square root, all automatically controlled by a punched tape program. That is the basis of modern computers. Binary system, program separated from hardware, memory separated from the processor, floating point arithmetic. Zuse developed it all in 1941, alone in Berlin. While bombs were falling around him, the Americans had the ENIAC in 1945, completed in 1946, huge 30 tons, 18,000 vacuum tubes. Programming by rewiring cables, inefficient. Zuse's Z3 was elegant, compact, programmatically flexible. And 4 years earlier, after the war, the world initially ignored Zuse. Germany was defeated. Nobody wanted German computers. IBM dominated. British Turing machines became legendary, but technically, Zuse was first. In 1998, computer scientist Raul Rojas proved the Z3 was Turing complete. That means it could theoretically execute any computable function, just like modern computers. The architecture was equivalent, binary, programmable, universal, German innovation, 1941. The question is, why was German technology so superior? The Project Eavesdrop recordings provide clues. One engineer says, "We didn't have the resources of the Allies, no endless oil fields like America, no vast manpower reserves like Russia, so we had to be more efficient, better, technically more sophisticated. A V2 turbopump had to be lighter than anything the Americans had, because we didn't have enough fuel to launch heavy rockets. A Messerschmitt Me 262 had to be faster because we were outnumbered, quality over quantity. That was the German strategy. And technologically, it worked. The V2 was the world's first ballistic missile. The Messerschmitt Me 262 was the fastest combat aircraft of the war. The Z3 was the first programmable computer. The Tiger tank had the best armor and firepower. The Type Vattumwanda U-boat was the most advanced submarine of its time. All German developments, all technically superior, but militarily too late, too few, too expensive, too complex for mass production under wartime conditions. The Allies won through mass, through resources, through sheer industrial capacity, but after the war, when time was no longer a factor, they copied the quality. Systematically, the Project Eavesdrop recordings document something else. German engineers knew they were superior, but they weren't arrogant. They were analytical. An excerpt from a conversation. Engineer A says, "The American turbopumps are too heavy. They use steel where we use light metal alloys." Engineer B replies, "They don't have the experience with high-temperature metallurgy. It will take them years to catch up. Or they'll get our people." Engineer A, "They'll get our people. That's more efficient." And that's exactly how it played out. Operation Paperclip wasn't chaotic. It was systematic. The Americans had lists, names of engineers, specialties, priorities, rocket technology, highest priority, aviation, high priority, chemistry. High priority, computers. Medium priority, because no one understood its significance in 1945, medicine. Low priority except for certain specialties. The lists were worked through, engineer by engineer. Werner von Braun and his team, to America. Messerschmitt aerodynamicists, to America. IG Farben chemists to America, a total of 1,600, with families, about 5,000 people, all with new identities, all with cleaned records, Nazi past erased. Only technical competence mattered, and this is where it gets morally complicated. Many of these engineers had worked for the Nazi regime during the war, some voluntarily, some forced. The V-2 was built by concentration camp prisoners in Mittelbau-Dora. Under brutal conditions, thousands died. Werner von Braun knew about it. He visited the production facilities. He saw the conditions, and he did nothing. After the war, he said, "I just wanted to build rockets." Politics wasn't my area, an excuse, or the truth of an engineer who valued technology over morality. The Americans decided the technology is more important. Cold War, atomic weapons, missile race against the Soviets. Moral concerns were pushed aside. The files were classified, not publicly available until the 1980s. 40 years of secrecy. Why? Because it was embarrassing. America, the moral superpower that had defeated Nazi Germany, was taking in Nazi engineers, giving them jobs, honoring them as heroes. Von Braun became an American icon, father of the space program. Time magazine cover, NASA legend, the dark past, concealed. The Project Eavesdrop recordings were also classified, not released until the 2000s. When historians analyzed them, it became clear these conversations were technical goldmines. German engineers explained details that were documented nowhere else: manufacturing processes, material compositions, design philosophies, all recorded, all archived, all used later. Let's look at the technical lineage. V2 turbopumps, 1942, Peenemünde, Werner von Braun and team. After 1945, Operation Paperclip, von Braun to Huntsville, Redstone rocket, 1953, Turbopump, further development of the V2, Jupiter rocket, 1958, Turbopump, based on V2 principles, Saturn V, 1967, F1 engine, turbopump, scaled up, but same basic design. NASA classified all Peenemünde documents until 1985. Why? Because they showed how much was directly copied. Today, 2025, SpaceX Raptor engine, turbopump by Barber-Nichols. Barber-Nichols worked on the NASA Fast Track program. Fast Track was based on Saturn technology. Saturn was based on the V2. The lineage is direct, 1942 to 2025. 83 years, the same principles. Of course, improved. Modern materials, better manufacturing techniques, computer-aided optimization. But the foundation, German, from 1942, the Messerschmitt Me 262 story is similar, but this one is about aerodynamics. In the Project Eavesdrop recordings, a Messerschmitt engineer discusses the wings. He explains, "We discovered through high-speed wind tunnel tests that swept wings reduce drag at high speeds. The Me 262 had an 18.5-degree wing sweep, not planned as an aerodynamic optimization. Originally, it was a design problem. The engine was heavier than expected. The center of gravity shifted. To compensate, the wings were swept back. Accidentally, this improved the aerodynamics at high speeds. German aerodynamicists in Göttingen analyzed this. They realized swept wings delay shock waves. At speeds near the speed of sound, shock waves form on the wings. These shock waves drastically increase drag. Swept wings distribute the airflow differently. The shock waves become weaker. The drag remains lower. This is why almost all modern high-speed aircraft have swept wings. Boeing 737, Airbus A320, F-15, F-35, all have swept wings. All are based on German wind tunnel data from 1942 to 1945. After the war, the Allies confiscated all German aerodynamic research. The Americans got tons of documents from Göttingen, wind tunnel data, theoretical calculations, test flight results. Everything was shipped to America, to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. There, American engineers analyzed every detail, and then they integrated it into their own designs. The North American F-86 Sabre, America's first high-performance jet fighter, had a 35-degree wing sweep. Directly based on German data, the F-86 dominated the Korean War, faster and more maneuverable than the Soviet MiG-15. Ironically, the MiG-15 also had swept wings. The Soviets had also seized German data. They also recruited German engineers. Operation Aviation, the Soviet equivalent of Operation Paperclip. Over 2,000 German specialists brought to Russia. Messerschmitt aerodynamicists, Junkers engine experts, all now working for Soviet aviation. The result? MiG-15 with swept wings and an axial-flow engine, German technology. Only now, Soviet, commercial aviation followed the same pattern. Boeing consulted German aerodynamicists for the B-47 Stratojet, the first American jet bomber with swept wings, a 35-degree sweep. High-speed performance, revolutionary for the time. The B-47 led directly to the B-52, to the 707, to the 737. Every generation of Boeing airliner uses principles from German research. The same with Airbus. A European consortium, founded partly by German firms, Messerschmitt Bölkow Blohm was a founding member. German aerodynamic tradition directly integrated into modern Airbuses. A320, A350, A380, all with optimized swept wings. All descendants of German wind tunnel research from the 1940s, back to Konrad Zuse and the computer lineage. Zuse didn't get the attention he deserved. After the war, Germany was destroyed. The Allies divided the country. Zuse lived in the Soviet zone, later East Germany. He started a small company, Zuse KG, built computers, sold them to European universities and firms. But the world was looking at America, at IBM, at Univac, at British Ferranti computers. German computers? Forgotten, too associated with the war, too much political baggage. But technically, Zuse had laid the groundwork. The binary system, that's fundamental. Every modern computer uses binary logic, ones and zeros, on and off, transistors in two states. Zuse realized in 1936 that binary is more efficient than decimal. Simpler circuits, less prone to errors, faster processing. He developed the Planck-Calcul programming language. In 1945, the first high-level programming language in the world, before Fortran, before COBOL, before everything. But nobody noticed it. Germany had lost. The world didn't want to celebrate German innovations. Only decades later did computer scientists recognize Zuse's contributions. In 1998, Raúl Rojas proved that the Z3 was Turing complete. That means, theoretically, the Z3 could perform any computable function, just like modern computers. The architecture was equivalent. The principles were the same: binary, programmable, memory separate from the processor, floating point arithmetic. All of that, in 1941, in Berlin, developed by a German engineer while the war raged around him. Today, Zuse is recognized, but the irony remains. American and British computers got the publicity. German computers laid the foundation, and the pattern repeats itself. German innovation, Allied marketing. Operation Paperclip was the mechanism of this technology transfer. But it wasn't just science, it was also politics. The Soviet Union conducted Operation Aviation in parallel. October 22, 1946. In a single night, Soviet troops took over 2,000 German specialists from the Soviet occupation zone with their families, by force, transported directly to Russia, to Soviet research facilities, rockets, airplanes, submarines, chemistry, everything. The Soviets were less subtle than the Americans. No contracts, no immigration documents, simply, you work for us now. Many of these engineers remained in the Soviet Union until the 1950s. Then some were allowed to return, others remained permanently. Some of their developments, the Soyuz rocket is partly based on V2 principles. The MiG-15 and MiG-17 use German aerodynamic knowledge. Soviet Whiskey-class submarines are based on German Type 21 U-boats. Technology transfer ran in both directions. West and East, both sides benefited from German wartime technology. But the Americans were more successful in marketing. Werner von Braun became an icon, television appearances, Walt Disney collaborations, public lectures about space travel. He sold the American dream, rockets to the moon, space stations, Mars missions, all based on his V2 experience. The dark side was covered up. Mittelbau Dora. Concentration camp prisoners, forced labor, thousands of deaths that only came to light later, in the 1980s. When the Operation Paperclip files were declassified, suddenly it became clear. America hadn't just brought over scientists. They had brought over active Nazi party members, SS members, war criminals, everyone with cleaned records. The US government had lied, broken immigration laws, all for the technology. The Cold War justified everything. Against the Soviets, the US needed the best rockets, the best aviation, the best technology. Moral concerns. Secondary. Today, in 2025, we see the legacy everywhere. Every rocket that launches, every airplane that flies, every computer that calculates, all carry traces of German wartime technology, not because the Germans continued innovating after the war, but because the Allies systematically took everything and further developed it and marketed it and presented it as their own. Douglas O. Reagan's book, Stealing Nazi Secrets, documents this in detail. He shows that it wasn't just opportunistic exploitation. It was strategic, planned, executed at the highest government level. The Allies knew whoever controlled German technology controlled the future. And they were right. The SpaceX Raptor engines are a perfect example. Elon Musk presents them as revolutionary, and in many ways they are reusable. Efficient, powerful, but the turbopumps, the basic principles, those come from Peenemünde. In 1942, Barbara Nichols, the manufacturer, worked with NASA for decades. NASA used V2 principles. Werner von Braun brought these principles to America. The line is unbroken. When SpaceX flies to Mars, it will be with technology whose roots lie in Nazi Germany. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is documented technical history. NASA technical reports confirm it. Patents show it. Engineering memoirs describe it. The V2 turbopump from 1942 is the grandmother of every modern rocket turbopump. Boeing 737, the most produced commercial aircraft in history, over 11,000 built, swept wings, 25-degree sweep. Why? Because German wind tunnel tests in the 1940s showed that swept wings are more efficient at high subsonic speeds. Boeing gained access to this data after the war, integrated it into every design. 707, 727, 737, 747. All with swept wings, all descendants of German research. Airbus the same. Every modern commercial aircraft flies with aerodynamic principles developed in Göttingen and other German institutes. Millions of people fly daily. No one knows that the wing shape comes from wartime research. Your computer, your smartphone. Every digital device. Binary. Ones and zeros. Konrad Zuse recognized in 1936 that binary is optimal. He built the first binary computer in 1941. The Z3, Turing complete, programmable. The architecture of modern computers is more complex. Transistors instead of relays, integrated circuits, gigahertz speeds, but the principle, binary, program memory separation, floating point arithmetic, all from Zeus. He didn't get the fame. IBM and American companies dominated. But the foundation, German, 1941. These technical truths aren't just history. They're in every smartphone, every airplane, every rocket that exists today. The Project Eavesdrop recordings from 1945 document German engineers predicting exactly this. They said, the Allies will have to copy everything, and they did, systematically, through Operation Paperclip, through technology transfer, through recruitment. If you appreciate this technical documentation, if you want to understand how our modern world really came about, then support this channel with super thanks. This research requires access to declassified documents, technical reports, historical archives. Your support helps to preserve and share this technological truth. Let's look at the overall balance sheet. German wartime technology, systematically exploited by both sides, West and East. V-2 rockets became the basis of both American and Soviet space programs. Messerschmitt Me-262 aerodynamics flow into F-86, Sabre and MiG-15. Konrad Zuse's computer principles are in every modern processor. Tiger tank torsion bar suspension is standard in every modern battle tank. Type Weddipine U-boat design influenced all post-war submarines. Infrared night vision, first developed by Germany, is now military standard. Jet engines with axial-flow compression are in every jet. Each of these technologies has a documented line from German wartime development to modern application. The Project Eavesdrop recordings show German engineers already knew this in 1945, but here's the philosophical question. Was it theft or was it technological evolution? The German engineers in the recordings see it pragmatically. One says, technology belongs to no one. We developed it for Germany. Now others will use it. That's how progress works. Another is more bitter. We lost the war. The winner takes everything. Our technology, our patents, our engineers. That's the price of defeat. Both perspectives have truth. Technology spreads. Ideas copy themselves. Innovation builds on previous knowledge. That's normal. But Operation Paperclip was more than normal technological diffusion. It was systematic exploitation, planned, organized, enforced with political and military power. German engineers had no choice, either to America or to Russia, or marginalized in a devastated Germany. Werner von Braun chose America. He later said, I wanted to go to the moon. Germany couldn't offer me that. America could. So I went. Was he opportunistic? Absolutely. Was he brilliant? Undoubtedly. Was he morally compromised? The evidence says yes. Mittelbau Dora. Concentration camp forced labor. Thousands died building his V-2 rockets. He knew about it. He didn't protest. After the war, he never really justified it. He focused on the future, on space travel, on exploration. The past, suppressed. The American government helped with this. Records redacted, past rewritten. Von Braun was made into a hero because America needed his expertise against the Soviets. In the race to the moon, morality was secondary. Today, we evaluate that differently. We recognize technological progress has costs. The V-2 cost more lives in its production than through its military use. Ironic, cruel, but true. The rockets that took astronauts to the moon were based on technology built by slaves. That's uncomfortable truth, but it is truth. The Project Eavesdrop recordings show another side. German engineers were often unpolitical. They saw themselves as technicians, as problem solvers, as scientists. Politics, not their domain. That was their self-justification. And after the war, the Allies used exactly this attitude. Forget the politics. Forget the crimes. Build us rockets, build us airplanes, build us computers, and they did. The technological lineage is crystal clear. The moral evaluation is complex, but the facts are undeniable. Modern space travel is based on V2 technology. Modern aviation uses German aerodynamics. Modern computers follow Konrad Zus's binary principles. This isn't speculation. It's documented. NASA technical reports, patent files, engineering memoirs, historical archives, all available. All confirming the same story. German wartime technology became the foundation of the post-war world, not through voluntary collaboration, but through systematic exploitation. Operation Paperclip, Operation Osuaviakim, technology transfer on an industrial scale. Douglas Reagan's book, Stealing Nazi Secrets, sums it up perfectly. The Allies won the war through industrial capacity, but they won the peace through German technology. That's the uncomfortable truth. 80 years after the end of the war, we're flying with German wing designs. We're launching rockets using German turbopump principles. We're computing with German binary architectures. And most people don't even know it. The Project Eavesdrop recordings document German engineers predicting exactly this. In 1945, in British listening posts, they said, "Our technology will shape the future. The Allies have no alternative. They will take everything." And that's exactly what happened. When you use your smartphone today, think of Konrad Zuse, binary code, 1941, Berlin. When you're on an airplane, look at the swept-back wings, German wind tunnels, 1942 to 1945, Göttingen. When you watch SpaceX launches, remember turbopump principles from Peenemünde, Werner von Braun, 1942. It's all connected, all documented, all true. The modern world stands on foundations laid in wartime laboratories. Not just German ones, but German contributions were exceptional and systematically exploited. That's our technological history. Complex, morally ambivalent, but factually undeniable. NASA still uses V2 design principles today. SpaceX too. Boeing too. All aviation companies use German aerodynamics research. Every computer manufacturer builds on binary principles. This isn't a conspiracy. This is technological history, documented, verified, acknowledged by experts. The question for us today is, how do we evaluate this? Is it theft? Is it justifiable spoils of war? Is it simply how technology works? Innovation building on innovation. The German engineers in the Project Eavesdrop recordings had different views. Some were proud, some were resigned. All knew their work would change the world, regardless of who used it. Share your opinion in the comments. NASA uses V2 design to this day. The SpaceX Raptor is based on turbopump principles from 1942. The Boeing 737 flies with the Messerschmitt Me 262 aerodynamic legacy. Is this technological theft? Are these justified war reparations? Is this simply how science works? The Project Eavesdrop recordings show German engineers in 1945 saying they will copy everything. 80 years later, they're right. But was it theft or evolution? Write your perspective. This discussion is important because it shows technology is never neutral. It has history, it has context, and sometimes it has dark roots.